The original Fortnite Chapter 1 is going to go down as one of the best times in gaming ever. So good that Epic would constantly take locations from the original map and bring them back again and again and again and again, and then just say, screw it, let's bring the entire map back twice. And a lot of people will say that they're just milking Chapter 1 and the hype is just artificial. It's all nostalgia. It's officially been a year since we had the Chapter 1 OG season. That was probably meant to be the last time we would ever play on that map, but Epic is bringing it back permanently in just a few weeks. So I wanted to see if the magic of Chapter 1 is just gonna die when it comes back for good, and if we only appreciated it because it was temporary, or if Chapter 1 is actually just better. Today we're not gonna be looking back at the entirety of Chapter 1, but after a full year since the OG season, I think it's a good time for a retrospective on that, and to me that season easily proved that it wasn't nostalgia. But real quick before we start, I just want to say thank you guys for the support on the last video and for 10,000 subscribers. That is so crazy. But dude, you know what else is crazy? Is that some of you guys are returning to watch multiple of my videos and you aren't subscribed. So subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on new videos, and use code Tedesco in the Fortnite item shop so I can quit my job. Thank you. What made this season's launch so good is the fact that we had no idea it was happening until just a few weeks before. We're almost at the end of the 4th chapter of Fortnite. The Chapter 1 map just seemed to be left behind in 2019 forever. We did know we were going into a 1-month season in November, and somehow Twitter users were genuinely convinced it would be a full-on Lego season. Anyway, on the last update of Chapter 4 Season 4, we'd see a loading screen with the time machine set to go back to the original Season 5, and a bunch of teasers would start to appear on the map. Once Epic started to officially advertise the season, the teasers were really nostalgic and way better than whatever this was. The hype was unreal, and the official announcement became one of their most liked tweets ever. I want to say the second most liked tweet, right behind the Dragon Ball announcement. I could be wrong on that though. Regardless, it was clear that people were excited to go back to this map, and after years of people saying Chapter 1 wasn't actually good, it's all just nostalgia, we'd finally get to replay it and decide for ourselves. On November 3rd, 2023, Fortnite OG dropped. And look guys, there's really no other way to put it. I'm gonna be glazing, okay? It was beautiful. I'm sure the memories started flooding in for a bunch of you, but let's look at this from a more objective point of view. And remember, people played this OG season that never got a chance to play the original Chapter 1. So did it live up to the hype? The map is great. Don't get me wrong, there was a point in time where people were begging to leave, but that was for a good reason. Last year, we returned to the Season 5 version of the Chapter 1 map, which was really solid. You had places like Pleasant Park, Lazy Links, Fatal Fields, Dusty Divot, Paradise Palms, Tilted Towers. There was something for everyone here, and I feel like that's where some of the newer maps missed the mark. These POIs just played and felt good, and what I mean by that is look at some of the places from the Primal season or the Wild season, and they were just horrible. Those are probably the most extreme examples, but you get what I mean. It feels like some of these newer locations are designed more with the intention to look good than to actually play good. The Primal POIs are awkward to build in and difficult to fight for that reason. The gameplay of these original Chapter 1 locations were great, probably because they were made up of simpler assets ported from Save the World. The biggest criticism I see about this map is the amount of reused assets. Some of the buildings in the POIs are identical, but for the suburban spots, I feel like that makes sense. Then you have random houses around the map and smaller huts, and again, I really don't see a problem with this. I actually like the familiarity that this map offers. Also, no bosses, no mythics, no NPCs, just 100 players drop in and fight, and I love that. Chapter 2 Season 1 gets a lot of hate for just being boring, but I actually look back at it fondly because it felt like the last normal season of Fortnite. And I'm not necessarily against the more modern scripted gameplay with the bosses and the henchmen and the vaults. The heist season of Chapter 4 was one of my favorite seasons of all time, but it was nice to play a normal battle royale, player versus player, and no OP mythics, just gun versus gun. Without the boss POIs, it felt like you could really land anywhere. Now, the visuals. This looked surprisingly amazing. Let's all admit that Chapter 4 is probably the best this game has ever looked, and it was a perfect blend of cartoony while being realistic in high definition, but OG's graphics were great too. The cartoony style is what represents this game, and it's not far-fetched to say that it helped the game's popularity in 2017-2018. A bunch of shooters aimed for realistic graphics with a dark, gritty color scheme, but Fortnite really stuck out. And to see these graphics back 5 years later, after a bunch of evolution throughout, I was shocked to see that it still worked. We did get new lighting, and they updated some models like the big trees, but yeah, for the most part, the original graphics from like 7 years ago, probably even earlier from Save the World, worked really well. My only complaint being that for whatever reason, the desert biome was extremely orange, and I think at some point in Chapter 4, they removed the fog, so that did make it look a little bit worse, but but in moment-to-moment gameplay, it looked great. But honestly, what's a good map without a good loot pool? And Chapter 1 has some of Fortnite's best and most iconic weapons and items. You have the Scar, Pump Shotgun, Bolt Sniper, Rocket Launcher, and it all works really well together. And it's weird to think that Fortnite really nailed the weapons on their first chapter. Like, yeah, we've had balance changes along the way, but there was never really a point in the game where it felt like the majority of the loot pool was overpowered or underpowered. It was generally balanced and fun. Take Chapter 3 Season 3 for example. On day 1, they added the Hammer AR, 2-shot shotgun, and DMR, and they were all ass. The Hammer did get some changes later on that made it feel a little bit better, but having a bunch of weapons that are all bad all at once really drags down the gameplay. And look, you do need some stuff that's not objectively great early game weapons, and of course the original Chapter 1 had its fair share of that, with the worst weapon they put out probably being the crossbow. But in last year's OG season, I'd say the only bad weapons were the burst and scoped ARs, because for some reason they made them even worse than they were originally, and the 6-shooter. For the most part, the OG season had a perfect balance of decent usable weapons, very good stealed weapons, fun and effective weapons, and classic Fortnite-like items. The game would update every week, taking us back into different seasons of Chapter 1 with locations and unvaults to represent that gameplay. The map changes were honestly really lackluster compared to the actual Chapter 1 seasons, and what they ended up doing instead of taking us back to the actual Season 7 or Season 8 map was just taking a smaller part that was added in those seasons and putting it onto the Season 5 map without removing anything. Kind of disappointing, but again, I've said that the Season 5 map was already good, so I didn't mind that much. Week 1, the start of the OG season, was of course based around Season 5 with some of the earlier classic Fortnite items thrown into the loot pool as well, like the smoke grenades. It wasn't a perfect one-to-one recreation of the original Season 5, with some stuff missing like the double barrel shotgun, some weapons functioning differently like the grenade launcher, and some stuff actually being buffed like the grappler being back to 20 uses and now with fall damage immunity, and the semi-auto sniper just being absolutely insane. And I think this probably worked better than just porting everything one-to-one, and also proved that this OG gameplay style still works today. The vehicles we started out with, we had the ATKs and the shopping cart. Okay, the shopping carts are trash, we can all admit it, but they were the first vehicle to ever be added, and they're kind of a harmless addition, so you can just ignore them if you want. The ATKs though are amazing. I've already said my hot take in another video that the cars have sucked since day 1. They're just a boring vehicle. They need fuel. Most of them handle horribly off-road, and it's also really annoying to chase someone down in a car and shoot the players inside, as it covers so much. The ATKs were honestly perfect, handled really well around the map, no fuel, and fighting other players in ATKs was pretty easy since they were exposed. This is what vehicles should be: good to use on the Fortnite map, fun to use, and not a crutch to escape fights. This was probably the simplest version of Fortnite we've had since at least Chapter 2, and it was still extremely fun. Week 2's Season 6 update brought the floating loot lake island, which was definitely an upgrade to the original loot lake. We got a bunch of unvaults, some being items that were originally introduced in Season 6, like the heavy AR, 6-shooter, dynamite, mounted turrets, and some other items that they just decided to throw in, like just now giving us the double barrel shotgun, clingers, shockwaves, and then for whatever reason we also got the Chapter 3 grapple glove. Yeah, I'm not sure what was going on with that, and they also brought us the Chapter 4 motorcycles down the line, which actually worked really well in the Chapter 1 map, and I don't think we'll ever know the reason why these decisions were made, but they weren't game breaking, so I really don't care. We got the quad crasher back, and no, you couldn't fly infinitely around the map, so that kind of sucked, but we also got the drift board, which I think is easily the most fun vehicle we've ever had. The loot pool here was probably the weakest in the season. The heavy AR will just never be as good as it originally was. I mean, a gold heavy now does as much as a blue one did when it first released. Porta Fortresses also came back, and those things were spawning up everyone's asses. I think the original Season 6 was kind of a weird time for Fortnite anyway, and it ended up taking place in between some of the most popular seasons, but what we got here for OG was still good. Week 3 brought Season 7 and 8 with like half of the ice biome and none of the jungle biome, but hey, it's better than nothing, I guess. Instead of getting the whole ice biome and the land around it blanketed in snow, what we got felt kinda incomplete, but it was still nice to have Flush Factory and Greasy Grove around. The loot pool here started to represent the later seasons of Chapter 1 with more crazy items like the drum gun, flint knock, combat shotgun, and quad launcher, and even though the drum gun is regarded as one of the most broken weapons in Fortnite history, it was in a nerfed state, so it was a decent addition. Cannons came back, which were kind of forgettable like the shopping carts, and the return of planes.
This is Fortnite, guys. This is Fortnite. We are doing Morse code in planes in the air. We are giving each other Morse code to be friendly in a solo battle royale.
They were fine this time around. The final week would bring the Seasons 9 and X update by just adding a meteor to the map. Okay, I can't defend the middle and map changes at this point. This one was just useless. But again, the loot pool makes up for it. One of my favorite and probably one of the best Chapter 1 weapons, the infantry rifle, finally came back. Even more crazy items like the jetpack and storm flip returned, and the baller vehicle, which kept its battery nerf from Chapter 3, but still fun to use. And I think that with all these vehicles, they're just better to use on the Chapter 1 terrain since the map isn't that complex. Which brings us into why was Fortnite OG so good? It's not only the charming, cartoony art style, but the gameplay simplicity. As I said before, Epic could put out a season with bosses and mythics and crazy items and insanely overpowered weapons, and you can still have a blast, but there's just something so addicting about this simple gameplay. Look, I can die in a 1v1, and maybe the guy I was fighting had higher rarity guns that did slightly more damage, or maybe he had a sniper or RPG that I didn't have, but for the most part, if I died, it was really a skill issue. We're on pretty even playing fields with the items available and the loot that the POIs have to offer. I didn't die to a mythic item that only one person in the match can have. And yeah, I'll never be on the same level as whatever the hell this is. But now with skill-based matchmaking that seems to work sometimes, and ranked modes, it's overall a good experience. Fortnite blew up in 2018, and this gameplay style is why. There are obviously people that started playing after Chapter 1, but this is what most of us fell in love with, and the modern style is fine too. Things have to change, and that's what kept the game alive back then, was the new updates every single week. So after years of everyone saying Chapter 1 was not good, it was boring, it's just rose-tinted glasses, Fortnite OG proved that it wasn't nostalgia, and we're gonna get to relive it again in just 2 weeks.